hum of the cameras, the billionaire smiled for the press. And his children didn't move. 2 6-year-olds sat at the piano like mannequins, eyes open, lips sealed, as flash after flash turned their silence into a spectacle. "Nothing brings me greater joy," Richard Langford declared, voice echoing through the marble hall. "My twins are thriving." But behind him, a maid gasped. Because when his voice rose, ever so slightly, one child flinched. No one noticed. Not the reporters, not the photographers, not the father too obsessed with appearances to see what was right in front of him. 2 years, no words, no laughter. Doctors called it trauma. Richard called it inconvenient. But that night, a storm rolled over Manhattan, and the next morning a new nanny walked through those golden gates, a woman whose patience would do what power never could. Because in this house of silence, she would become the sound that changed everything. This is Black Stories, where the pain of prejudice is told and justice always finds its voice. If you believe compassion can crack the hardest marble, lean in, tap like, and subscribe. Because in the next minutes you'll watch a Just the Nanny unlock 2 kids' first words, shatter a billionaire's silence on a live stage, and turn a house of control into a home where voices rise and heal. The first time Selena Cole saw the Langford mansion, she almost turned back. The iron gates stretched taller than any church steeple she'd ever prayed under. The intercom voice was cold, metallic. "State your name and purpose." Selena Cole, childcare appointment. A pause. Then the gate clicked. The car that drove her in could have fit her entire apartment. She clutched her worn leather bag. Inside, a notebook filled with children's songs and a picture of her mother. Her mom used to say, "Love ain't loud, baby. It's steady." Selena had lived by that ever since. 3 years ago, she was a full-time pediatric therapist at a community hospital in Harlem, until budget cuts erased her department overnight. The same week, her landlord tripled her rent. She spent the next year bouncing between babysitting gigs and part-time cleaning work, watching her qualifications mean nothing in the eyes of people who only saw her skin. Still, she kept her calm. Because she had her gift, her way of reaching children others called broken. Her last job proved it. A 6-year-old boy with selective mutism who hadn't spoken since witnessing his mother's death had whispered his first word to her. Safe. That word had followed her everywhere. And now, standing before the marble steps of the Langford estate, she could only hope she'd find that word again, for herself, and maybe for whoever lived behind those gilded doors. Inside, the air smelled like lemon polish and silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that hums with tension, where every echo feels watched. "Mr. Langford is expecting you," said a voice. It was Jennifer, the head housekeeper, expression tight but polite. As Selena followed, she noticed the help never looked up. They moved like ghosts, efficient and invisible. And then she saw them. 2 children sitting on a velvet rug in the sunroom, staring at nothing. Twins, a boy and a girl, identical features, identical stillness. The boy's fingers traced invisible lines on the carpet. The girl's eyes flicked toward him every few seconds, as if afraid he might disappear. "Noah and Ella," Jennifer whispered. "They don't talk to anyone." Selena crouched down, keeping her voice soft. "Hi, I'm Miss Selena." No response, just 2 pairs of blue eyes, watchful, curious, frightened. Richard Langford entered seconds later, all confidence and control. "Miss Cole, you come highly recommended," he said, scanning her resume. "Your job is simple. Keep them occupied. Don't upset them. They've had a traumatic adjustment since their mother's passing. He said it like a business memo. Selina glanced at the framed photo on the piano, a beautiful woman holding the twins near a lake. Her smile looked real. Hers was the only warmth in this frozen palace. "What happened to her?" Selina asked gently. Richard's eyes hardened. "Accident. We don't discuss it here." The words landed heavy, final. But Selina noticed something he didn't. How Ella's hand clenched when he said accident, and how Noah's breathing hitched. That night, when everyone else had gone to bed, Selina sat in the children's room quietly humming a lullaby her mother used to sing. Halfway through, Ella stirred in her sleep. Noah turned his head, and for the first time since they met, he blinked twice in rhythm to her hum. It wasn't much, but it was something. Selina smiled faintly, because deep down she knew what everyone else refused to believe. These children weren't mute by nature. They were silent by choice, and whatever had taken their voices was still living inside this house. By the end of her first week, Selina had learned 3 things about the Langford mansion. First, it was a palace built on precision. Every surface shined. Every servant moved in timed silence. Even the laughter that echoed from Richard's guests sounded rehearsed. Second, there were rules for everything. No shoes on marble floors, no speaking during meals, no direct questions about Mrs. Langford. And the third rule, though no one said it out loud, know your place. The staff's eyes always followed Selina when she entered a room, not cruelly, but carefully, like they were waiting for the inevitable. "You're new," whispered Maria, a housemaid folding napkins beside her one morning. "They'll test you." "They?" Selina asked. "Mr. Langford." The guests, even the children, though not by choice. Then Maria leaned closer. "Be careful. Here, empathy looks like rebellion." Selina smiled politely, but she could feel it, the invisible ceiling pressing down on everyone who wasn't rich, white, or powerful. That afternoon, a lunch meeting blurred into a photo shoot. Richard had invited investors from the Langford Foundation, the charitable arm of his billion-dollar empire. The cause? Children's mental health. Photographers lined up outside the garden. Assistants adjusted flowers, light, and smiles. But when the twins arrived, dressed identically, eyes vacant, Selina saw the truth behind the picture-perfect facade. "Stand closer to Daddy," Richard ordered gently. "Smile for the nice people." Noah's lip trembled. Ella looked down. Neither moved. Selina knelt behind the camera crew, out of sight, whispering under her breath, "Breathe, babies. You're safe." It was instinctive, soft, protective, but that whisper drew a cold glare from Richard's assistant, Miss Grayson. "Please remember your role," she hissed. "We don't speak during media moments." Selina bit back the retort. She knew what role meant. Still, when Richard's hand landed too firmly on Noah's shoulder, the boy flinched so visibly the cameras caught it. The investors shifted uncomfortably. Richard laughed to cover it. "They're a little camera shy, takes after their mother." The crew chuckled. Selina didn't. Because she saw what no one else saw, Noah's eyes darting to the pond at the far end of the property. The same pond from the family photo she'd noticed on the piano. The one labeled Langford Family Retreat, Summer 2021. The date. The same year Mrs. Langford had accidentally drowned. That night, after the guests left, Selina overheard a conversation in the corridor. Richard's voice, sharp, rehearsed. "I don't want another therapist traumatizing them with questions." "They're regressing, sir," Ms. Grayson replied. "Ella refuses to sleep in her room." Noah doesn't speak, but he's been drawing the same image every night. What image? The lake. And a woman's hand. Silence. Then the soft clink of a glass being set down. "Destroy it," Richard said flatly. Selina froze in the shadows, her heart pounding. When she returned to the nursery later, the children were awake, huddled together under one blanket. A crumpled drawing lay half-hidden under Noah's pillow. A woman sinking into the lake, two tiny hands reaching out. Selina's breath hitched. She looked at the twins, both staring back at her, eyes pleading but wordless. And that's when she realized it wasn't just trauma keeping them quiet. It was fear. Someone, or something, inside this house wanted their silence. And Selina, the woman they thought would never last a week, had just become the only person willing to break it. The next morning began with shouting. Not from the children, from Richard Langford. Selina was on her way to the kitchen when she heard his voice ricochet through the hall. "I said no toys in my office. Who brought them in here?" The twins stood trembling in front of him, a small wooden bird clutched in Ella's hand. One wing was broken. Richard ripped it from her fingers and threw it into the trash. "No distractions. You need structure, not sentiment." Ella's lower lip quivered. Noah stared at the ground, fists tightening until his knuckles turned white. Selina froze in the doorway. Her pulse quickened, but her voice stayed even. "Sir, that was mine. I was teaching them to repair it." Richard turned sharply. "Miss Cole, I pay you to follow my instructions, not improvise therapy sessions." "With respect," she said, keeping her tone calm, "teaching them to rebuild something broken is therapy." That pause, those 2 seconds, shifted everything. The staff stopped pretending to dust. The air thickened. And for the first time since she arrived, Richard Langford looked genuinely uncertain. Then he laughed, a hollow sound that echoed off the marble. "Let me give you advice, Miss Cole. In this house, broken things stay broken. They remind us what happens when we get sentimental." He walked away before she could respond. But when he was gone, Ella stepped forward, her eyes glassy with tears. She reached into the trash, pulled out the bird, and pressed it against her chest. That night, Selina didn't sleep. She sat by the children's bedside, working silently with a tube of glue and a brush. Under her steady hands, the little wooden bird began to take shape again. When morning came, it sat on the nightstand, whole once more. And that's when it happened. Ella woke first. She blinked, saw the toy, and gasped, a sound so small it could have been mistaken for breath. But Noah heard it. He turned, eyes wide. Selina whispered, "Go ahead, sweet girl." "Say it." Ella's lips parted, trembled. Then, a whisper so fragile it nearly broke the air. "Bird." Selina's breath caught. Noah's hand shot out, gripping his sister's arm like he couldn't believe it either. The moment lasted only seconds before footsteps echoed in the hall. Richard's voice. Selina snatched the toy and hid it behind her. He opened the door, perfectly composed. "Breakfast in 10. No delays." The children stiffened, the silence snapping back like a cage door closing. But Richard didn't notice the tiny movement behind his back. Noah slipping his fingers into his sister's, holding on. It wasn't speech. Not yet. But it was rebellion. In the weeks that followed, tiny sounds began to surface. Hums, half-syllables, small breaths that shaped into rhythm, but full words still hid like shy birds waiting for the right moment to fly. And in a house ruled by silence, even that small act was a revolution waiting to detonate. 3 weeks passed. To anyone else, the Langford mansion looked unchanged. But something subtle had shifted inside its walls. The twins began following Selina from room to room. They didn't speak, but they watched her every move. The way her hums filled silence, the way her presence softened the air. And though Richard Langford's rules remained carved in stone, Selina had learned to bend them in the quietest ways. A hum here, a touch of sunlight there, and at night stories whispered like prayer. She was teaching them that not every voice needed to be loud to be heard. But the more peace she gave them, the more tension she felt rippling beneath the surface, especially when Richard appeared. He'd linger in doorways longer than necessary. His gaze lingered on her hands, her patience, the way the children leaned into her without fear. One night, after a bored dinner, he passed the nursery and stopped. Selina was kneeling beside Ella's bed, showing her how to tie ribbons into loops. Noah sat nearby, drawing quietly. Richard watched for a full minute before speaking. "You have a calming effect on them." Selina turned, surprised by the softness in his voice. "They don't need control, Mr. Langford. They need connection." His jaw tightened. "You think I don't try?" "I think you're afraid to." For a brief second, he looked like someone else. Tired, fragile, human. Then the mask slid back on. "Good night, Miss Cole." But that night, Selina noticed something strange. When she went to tuck Noah in, his sketchbook lay open. The newest drawing made her heart drop. A woman, half submerged in dark water, her hair flowing like smoke. Above her, 2 small children reaching down from a balcony. And in the reflection of the water, a man's shadow. The next morning she found Ella crouched by the window, whispering to herself. Her voice barely audible, trembling like a secret fighting to be free. "Mommy, fell." Selina froze. "What did you say, sweetheart?" Ella's eyes filled with tears. "Mommy fell." "Daddy!" shouted. A chill ran through Selina's veins. Later, she confronted Jennifer, the head housekeeper, in the laundry room, where cameras didn't reach. "What really happened to Mrs. Langford?" Jennifer's hands shook as she folded linens. "You shouldn't ask questions that can cost you a job." "Please." The older woman hesitated, then whispered, "She didn't fall. She jumped." Or that's what they said. But none of us believed it. Selina frowned. "Why?" Jennifer's eyes darted towards the hallway. "Because the night before, she was trying to leave. Bags packed, kids ready, and then..." Footsteps. Richard's voice. Jennifer went pale and turned back to her work, folding faster. Selina stepped away just in time as he appeared in the doorway. "Everything all right?" "Just laundry," Selina said softly. Richard's eyes narrowed. "Good. I like things kept spotless." He left, but the double meaning lingered. When Selina returned upstairs, Noah's sketchbook was gone. His pillow was missing too, replaced with a new one, and tucked neatly under it, where only she would find it, was a single torn page from his drawing. The piece that showed the man's shadow. In that moment, memory hit her like lightning. Noah's sketch wasn't imagination. The balcony above the lake, the shattered railing, the children watching from the window. She could see it now. A storm. A shout. A stumble that became a fall. And a man frozen in shock long enough for silence to finish what anger had started. Scrawled beneath it, in small, trembling letters, were the first words he'd ever written. He made her. The Langford mansion had hosted dozens of galas. But that night, the Langford Foundation Benefit for Childhood Wellness would be the one they never forgot. The chandeliers blazed like judgment. Cameras flashed as billionaires toasted under banners about empathy, healing, and giving children their voices back. The irony was unbearable. Selina stood at the far end of the hall, watching Richard smile for the press, the perfect image of benevolent success. Ella and Noah sat stiffly beside him, pale in their matching outfits, eyes vacant. Ms. Grayson hovered nearby, scanning everything with hawk-like precision. Selina wasn't supposed to be here. Nannies didn't mingle with donors, but she'd been summoned last minute to escort the children for photos. That's when she noticed the small bandage on Noah's wrist, and the way Ella's tiny fingers kept tracing it, trembling. A familiar dread climbed up Selina's spine. Then she saw the camera crew setting up for a live-streamed speech. Earlier that week, the PR team had bragged about the live global feed, streaming directly to the foundation's donors and media partners. Selina remembered their pride in that detail, and for the first time, she was grateful they hadn't kept anything private. Behind Richard, a massive screen flickered to life, displaying the foundation's slogan, "Every child deserves to be heard." Selina almost laughed. As the music faded, Richard took the stage, microphone in hand, every word rehearsed to perfection. "Tonight," he began, "we celebrate hope, perseverance, and the healing power of family." But before he could continue, Ella rose from her chair. The room went silent. She walked slowly toward the stage, each step trembling, determined. Noah followed, clutching the broken wooden bird Selina had repaired weeks ago. "Ella," Richard's voice wavered. "Sit down, sweetheart." Instead, the little girl climbed the steps, turned to the audience, and whispered into the mic. Mommy didn't fall. Gasps rippled through the room. Selina's heart stopped. Richard froze. "What did you say?" Noah's hand shot out, clutching his sister's. His voice broke through the air for the first time, raw, small, and filled with terror. She tried to run. 1,000 cameras captured it. The silence that followed was louder than applause. Selina stepped forward instinctively, protective, trembling but resolute. "That's enough," Richard snapped, his face cracking under the weight of exposure. "They're confused." "My wife, she was unwell." Selina shook her head. "They remember, Richard. You can bury records, you can fire therapists, but you can't erase what children see." Reporters leaned forward. Microphones rose. "What is she talking about, Mr. Langford?" one shouted. "Is this true?" "Did your wife—" Richard's composure crumbled. "Turn off the cameras," he barked, slamming the mic down. But the live stream had already reached 48,000 viewers, climbing by the second. Selina's voice cut through the chaos. "Every child deserves to be heard, right? That's what your banner says. So let's start by listening to them." Ella clung to her leg. Noah buried his face in her coat. The audience, a sea of polished donors, watched in uneasy silence as Richard Langford, billionaire philanthropist, stood exposed under his own slogan. And in that moment, the power shifted. From him, to the woman he'd dismissed, to the children he'd silenced, to the truth he could no longer control. The live stream didn't end when Richard yelled, "Cut!" It multiplied. Clipped. Captioned. Shared. Within minutes, hashtags flooded social media. Hashtag let them speak. Hashtag Langford Twins Truth. $, silence is abuse. Every outlet replayed the clip, Ella's trembling voice, Noah's first words, Selena's defiant stance under the banner that mocked the hypocrisy of "every child deserves to be heard." By dawn, the video hit 12 million views. Corporate sponsors began reviewing partnerships. The Langford Foundation's website went offline. And beneath the chaos, the public smelled something deeper: the cover-up of a death that had never been properly investigated. Inside the mansion, Richard's empire crumbled faster than his excuses. His PR director quit live on camera. Board members resigned, and detectives arrived with warrants, not just for documents, but for therapy logs and medical payments made in cash. Selena watched it all unfold from the kitchen, her hands trembling around a mug of tea she couldn't bring herself to drink. Jennifer entered quietly, eyes red from scrolling the headlines. "They're calling you a hero," she whispered. "The nanny who broke the silence." Selena shook her head. "I didn't break anything. I just listened." Upstairs, the twins slept for the first time without medication. By noon, the mansion gates were surrounded by reporters. Richard emerged finally, suit unbuttoned, eyes hollow. Flashes burst like lightning. "Mr. Langford, did you silence your children? Was your wife's death an accident or murder? Why did your children only speak after the new nanny arrived?" He opened his mouth, then shut it. Every carefully built sentence dissolved into static. Behind him, through the tall glass windows, the world saw something that made them gasp again. Selena, holding Noah's hand. Ella beside her, clutching the repaired wooden bird. A single headline captured the image within seconds: "The woman who gave the Langford twins their voices." Within a week, after 2 emergency sessions and a storm of resignations, the board of the Langford Foundation reached its decision. By unanimous vote, they removed Richard as chairman. In the same press release, they announced a complete rebranding, a new initiative under a new name: the Voice Rising Fund, with Selena Cole appointed as its first advisory director. Selena tried to refuse at first. "I don't want his money," she said. Jennifer smiled sadly. "It's not his anymore. It's theirs. And yours." Across the city, TV anchors debated wealth and power. Think pieces called her a symbol of compassion over control. Protesters outside the mansion carried signs that read, "Silence isn't discipline, it's damage." Richard Langford disappeared from public view within a week. But his fall became something larger, a case study in how prejudice, pride, and the illusion of control can mute not just children, but truth itself. And in the middle of it all, Selena, the quiet woman the world once ignored, had become the heartbeat of a movement she never meant to start. 3 months later, the Langford mansion no longer looked like a fortress. The guards were gone. The heavy curtains had been replaced with glass that let sunlight flood every room. And where portraits of Richard once hung, now there were murals, children painting with broad, joyful strokes, their laughter echoing through halls once defined by silence. Selena stood in the garden, holding a clipboard, directing volunteers. The estate had been donated, turned into a rehabilitation and art therapy center for children recovering from trauma. A bronze plaque by the gate read, "The Langford Children's Institute, founded by voices, not power." Behind her, Ella ran across the grass, laughing out loud. Noah followed, clutching a paintbrush dripping blue. Their progress was nothing short of miraculous. And yet, Selena never took credit. "I didn't teach them to speak," she often said. "I just showed them someone was listening." As the grand opening ceremony began, the crowd included activists, journalists, and families whose children had been silenced by shame or neglect. Selina rolled her shoulders, still unused to being the center of attention. For weeks before the opening, Richard had shown up before dawn, sweeping halls, sanding old floors, fixing what others might never notice. No reporters, no audience, just quiet work, maybe the first honest labor of his life. Then she saw him, Richard Langford, standing quietly in the back. No entourage, no cameras, just a man stripped of image, holding a small bouquet of white lilies. For a moment, the world around them blurred. He approached slowly, stopping a few feet away. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, voice rough, "but I wanted to thank you. You didn't just give them their voices back. You gave me mine. The truth hurts, but silence killed us long before the scandal did." He hesitated, eyes fixed on the children across the lawn. "That night at the lake, I lost my temper. She was leaving, said she couldn't raise them in a house that punished feeling. I followed her outside, shouting. She turned to walk away, the storm hit, and the railing gave out. I reached for her, but pride always slows the hand that should have loved first." He swallowed hard. "When the police called it an accident, I let them. Because telling the truth meant admitting that my anger and my silence pushed her there." Selina looked at him, not as the man who once hid behind power, but as a father trying finally to understand love. "Then start over," she said softly. "Not as a billionaire, as a man who listens." He nodded, eyes glistening. And then something happened no one expected. He knelt beside Noah, picked up a paintbrush, and joined the children. A hush fell over the crowd. A billionaire once obsessed with control, now learning the art of humility, surrounded by color, sound, and laughter that once never existed here. As the ceremony ended, cameras captured the final image that would circle the internet again. Selina, standing beside the twins, sunlight washing over them, while Richard painted handprints with his children on the last blank wall. The caption on every post read, "Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the proof that love speaks louder than power." And for the first time, the house that once silenced voices became a sanctuary built on them. The mansion that once silenced two children now hums with laughter. The woman they once called just the help became the voice that taught a billionaire how to listen. Selina never sought revenge, she sought restoration. And in doing so, she rewrote what power looks like, not in money or status, but in compassion that refuses to break. We see Ella and Noah guiding other children through speech games. Their laughter fills every corner. Richard watches from the garden, humbled, painting quietly with the kids. Proof that some miracles don't roar. They whisper. No thunder this time, just laughter rolling across the same marble halls that once echoed only silence. They thought she came to serve, but she came to heal, and in teaching two children to speak, she taught an empire to listen. This is Black Stories, where dignity outlasts pride and love rewrites legacy. If you believe compassion is the truest power, like this video, share it and subscribe. Because every week we give voice to the quiet heroes who